On this week's show, discussing how to become a paperless builder with Hamzah Shanbari from Haskell. In this week's news, plants on hold, the future of search, digital twinning, and more. All right, Nathan C. Wood, back in the basement in the office, got a rug in there, so listen to those sweet sounds.
There's no dust around. Everything's clean. I mean, there's a little clutter over here that you can't see. That's off camera, but for the most part, it looks like I'm put together.
Well, you're starting to look better, and I do miss the sounds of construction in the background. But what are you at? Punch list phase? Is that where we're at?
You may still catch it. They're cutting some trim and stuff in the basement, so every once in a while. But I think all the cutting's outside now because we're a clean house. We're moved in. We had a Super Bowl party, so we're official. No final inspection, but we had a Super Bowl party.
Nice. Well, and I have a fantastic guest that I don't think many of you are going to need many introductions on, but I'm excited to have him on the crew. Hamzah Shanbari. Hamzah, how are you, man?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jeff and Nate.
It's great excited to have you here. You got the great background going. Like, you look like you got work going on in there.
I try to get work going.
Let me those sticky notes.
There's too many. There's too many ConTech companies out there. So I'm just trying to keep track of the ones that we are directly involved with.
Well, you guys are going to want to hear that because Hamzah's not just involved with it. He's driving a lot of the things that are going on. And it's going to be really fun to dive into all the things he's got going because he is one of the busiest men in construction right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Before we dive in, though, we got to pause for the cause.
Construction in general is a highly stressful environment, and you see the stress, and you always get the "I'm fine" answer, but I always try to dig a little deeper because people say, I haven't been sleeping great, and I'm really eating crappy food, and I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel, we'll start to really get into those conversations and figure out what's going on. There's some great resources, and if you go to brentdarnell.com/resources, first, there's an emotional intelligence and physical symptoms survey test. So we get your emotional profile and we get your physical profile based on physical symptoms, and we tell how your body's working, and then we can correlate those two. And if you're experiencing burnout, it will show up in probably both of those evaluations. It's free. You just download it and do it. And just so see where you are. And if burnout's the top 2 or 3 that pop up and show up there, I would pay attention. And start to really look at what are you doing with stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and daily reflection and those kinds of things that we know we need to do to keep us healthy and keep us sane and keep us on track.
You've got to check in with where you are. You've got to work on balancing. It's not about the diagnosis. It's about preventing people from getting too far down the road. Like most of our construction folks that listen in, they take care of their cars. They keep them up to date. This is no different. You've got to put in the maintenance on the body, on the mind, because you're racing this car around the track, right? We're not going to change that we're a bunch of race cars out there, but we can change that we do the right maintenance, take the right time, and really check in.
One more resource in there, the Tough Guy Survival Kit, guy being gender neutral. It's specifically written geared toward more field folks, but there's a really great chapter on stress management and peak performance in there, and it talks about meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques.
All right. You guys know it. I've been looking. I'm not seeing reviews yet. I need to see more reviews. So get on Spotify, give us 5 stars because we rock, and give us that review because it means a lot and it moves us up. So more people might learn about it. And who knows? Maybe it'll be one of your teammates that starts helping you out on this journey of technology and innovation, or who knows? Let's get it going, guys. Thanks. Back in 2020, I heard about a new software platform called Join. Within minutes of seeing Join, I knew it had the power to revolutionize collaborative project delivery. In fact, I was so sold on Join that I joined the team as its industry evangelist. Many trade shows and podcasts later, Join is now used by 50% of the ENR top 30. Why? Pre-con and ops leaders at DPR, Bolt, McCarthy, Barton Mallow, Clark, and others say that they like Join because it does two big things: collaborative, trackable decision-making, and awesomely simple visuals. Want to learn more about the power of Join? Go to www.join.build/demo to learn about how better gets built. All right, we're back. So, Director of Innovation at Haskell is just the tip of the iceberg. So, Hamzah, give folks who don't know you a little bit of your history and how you got to where you are today.
First of all, thanks again for having me. I've been trying to get on the ConTech crew for quite some time. But I guess I wasn't important enough. I don't know.
Whoa. We're not starting there.
It's a big one, man. I mean, I can attest to that. I've been a follower from the early days, from the ConTech trio days. So yeah, this is an honor for me to be on this, and thank you again for hosting me.
Well, I'm going to say we saved it for, I think, the right time, right? I think a lot of what we were doing back in those days was learning and creating the next generation. And I think, me taking over the show, you being on the show, that's the next gen stepping into the leadership role. So that's, I think it was like fine wine, man.
Yeah.
You had to wait for the right moment.
Yeah. What happened throughout that whole time of you listening from ConTech Trio to ConTech Crew? What were you doing?
Yeah, what were you doing during those days, man?
Oh man, learning. That's for sure. That's one. And then so I kind of had an interesting background because I grew up in a family that has nothing to do with construction, like zero related. But I keep mentioning that because there was just a house that was built next to ours that was fascinating to me. And I was like a kid, like talking about like 8, 9 years old. It's constantly just watching. I come back from school, throw the backpack away, and just sit down and watch, right? And it's like all these guys that are just trying to figure things out, right? It's all problem solving. It's all trying to see what's the next hurdle to overcome. So that kind of got me interested, and graduated high school, and then got into architectural engineering, which is kind of like a blend between design and the actual engineering and construction management aspect. So it kind of gave me like a holistic approach, look at construction. Worked for a couple of years as kind of like an owner's rep, worked with a lot of GCs and subs and trying to get things going, but then decided to pursue higher education. So got my master's PhD from the University of Florida, go Gators. And then that was around 2008, 2009. So like BIM was, it was a thing, but it was just becoming like mainstream right now, right? So I started learning more about that at school, and it got me really interested in not only just BIM and what it can do for design, but also what else you can pile on top of that in terms of technologies, how else you can become better in communicating and doing, the actual work and QCing and all that stuff. So 2016, I was fortunate enough to join Haskell and the BIM VDC department. Worked again there for a couple of years, just doing a lot of model coordination, 4D sequencing, what have you, all the AR, VR stuff, and was constantly like trying to find new solutions, new technologies that would help selfishly us, right? It's like, that's how I see it always. It's like, how can I find a software that can help me do my job better? But the more I kept, finding software and using it, the more I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? That's not your job. But I'm like, well, whose job is it? Like, I don't know. It's nobody's job. Do you want that? I'm like, yes, of course I want that job. So that's actually, that's a good segue, because 2018 is when Haskell had new leadership, CEO appointed from within. And he had that vision of 2025 where we want to be, and kind of like worked backwards on what the pillars that we need to build on. And one of them was being in the forefront of technology and innovation and harnessing the immense mind power that we have within Haskell. And that's when they stood Dysruptek, which is a separate LLC within Haskell that, that's all we do is we look at technologies, evaluate, pilot, test, even go R&D and create things that don't exist out there.
Yeah, it's an amazing change and transformation. I know there was an incredible culture at Haskell early on and along the way, but how did that culture change when the new CEO came in and said, hey, we're going to do these pillars and we're really going to push? Because I think there's a lot of companies out there that want to be that.
Yeah.
Right. But they just can't because they don't understand that underneath all of it is culture. So talk a little bit about how that played a role in your transformation and then finally founding something like Dysruptek.
The way that they approached it was genius in my mind. Of course, I'm biased here, but they figured out that, and they, of course, they talked to peers and other companies that are doing similar things to get some of that perspective. But the idea is you can't really have somebody that has a full-time job evaluating this stuff on the side. And that's what we've been doing for the longest time, right? As part of VDC, we were the technology guys. Yes, we were looking at technology at the same time, but I'm still bogged down by all these deliverables because the project is pouring concrete at like midnight tonight, right? I need to give them those drawings. I can't just keep evaluating tech. So that was the first thing they said. We need a dedicated group, a dedicated team of people that are fully dedicated to this overhead. That's nothing that's going to bog them down. Just go look at all these technologies and help us. And actually, that's where the name comes from. Dysruptek is like we're trying to disrupt Haskell before somebody else disrupts them, right? So we're trying to become that bridge and find the technologies that can help us become better, deliver better product for our clients without being, outplayed, so to say, in the market.
It's great because that's the innovator's dilemma, right? You have to make incremental change and you have to have people in BIM and VDC still incrementally improving your deliverables and your constructability and your means and methods and getting those drawings out when you need them, all the while investing in what's going to be the brand new way to do things. And so that's the sort of the secret sauce. We've seen a few people try to copy it, man. And I think that's awesome, right? Like,
imitation is the highest form of flattery, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But I think we've seen right now, we're in sort of some, I'd call it new space for construction technology because we were when it started, it was such a rocket ship. And I think this is the first time, like, sort of the boosters are off and everybody's kind of wondering what's going to happen. Right. And I think you see some of the folks, are, how are you guys and how are you and Dysruptek taking this opportunity differently than maybe some of the ones that were just, I'll call it for what it is, copycatting?
Thank you for that. But what we're trying to position it is in three different pillars, what we call the 3 I's, right? So invest, invent, and innovate. Innovate is the bigger umbrella, right? And that's just trying to push the Haskell employee base to think outside the box, to, just because this was the way that you taught how to do the work, it doesn't mean that there is no better way, right? Just constantly putting that message out. And what we get from that is sometimes that feeds into either the invest or the invent umbrellas. And in terms of investing, we invest time and resources and even sometimes capital in these startups companies that are out there that are delivering solutions that help us solve for some of these problem statements. But sometimes we can't find them, and that's when we go R&D mode. And again, I use this as the last resort. I try to find as much solutions as I can to help them and help the industry overall. But sometimes we can't find it, so we have to switch hats and put developer mode back on and find third parties that can help us build something that doesn't exist.
I think it's fascinating because, again, my history with DPR and innovation, and they have an innovation team, and then the venture part is WND Ventures. Yeah. And it's interesting. It sounds like Dysruptek is almost kind of taking both that internal corporate dedicated innovation team, which is very core, and the investment arm, and basically making that one of the same organization, which is, it's a very novel thing that I don't think I've seen anybody else do.
That is really interesting, but it's also exhausting because there's a lot going on.
I was going to say, like, how do you? It's like there's usually a reason why there's two, right? Yeah, how do you do both?
And we're only like we're a small lean team too. We're only a team of 4, so we're kind of dividing and conquering and always trying to find the best way to approach things. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that's happening in the space that, and we talk to our peers, and they're telling us they're even separating like emerging tech from innovation, two. So now it's becoming like these three pillars that we do as Dysruptek. They're completely two different, like three different business units, so to say, which is interesting to see. But they all bleed into each other. So that's going to be the hard part. If you're separating them, is like how do you make sure that those communication lines are still intact?
Well, and let's maybe use those columns at the top over your shoulder there. If I see backlog or I see WIP, so what? Help me understand what are those categories, and like how are you looking at the different areas of disruption?
Yeah, so this is just keep track of the startups that we're working with. So backlog is the stuff that I'm interested in that we probably haven't really reached out and did a formal demo yet. But then it goes into evaluation, which is like, okay, this is good. I find value here. I think I can match it with some of the problem statements that we're talking to our employees about. And then it goes into triage, which is like, all right, I found the team, I found the technology. Now let's put an implementation plan, find a project for it, and kind of kick it off, so to say. And then it goes into WIP, work in progress. That's the actual pilot. We continue to we try to give the team as much, we try to be as much hands off from that pilot as possible. We try to kind of just guide them because we want to see the adoption come from them, right? We don't want to just be on top of them the whole time, say, I want you to use this, right? But we need to continue capturing that data points and evaluation and subjective feedback from the end users. So we're constantly looking at that. And then we go to reporting. And that's kind of where it ends for Dysruptek, because I created a report and I have actually this is an example report of that, that we just compile everything that we did. Like who's the team, what was the implementation plan, what was the success criteria, timeline, project, location, all of the stuff. And then what were the findings, right? What were the metrics that we were trying to measure against? Did we meet them or not? And hand it off to operations with some recommendations at the end that says, you can scale this, or sometimes it's not, right? So that's kind of where we stop. We give it to operation. We say, take it from here.
Yeah, that looks like, I think Kanban is the right term for kind of that. Yeah, it follows a process of different steps. Like, man, if only we could do that for all of our construction processes too, right?
Oh, that would be great.
That was very well laid out. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
You hit a couple of things. One, that are really unique. Truth and transparency. I've been on the other side of this with Hamzah before, and I've seen one of those reports. And the amount of rigor that you put into the report and into the companies and into the process is doing a huge service to the industry. And I don't think it's highlighted enough. So talk a little bit about some of the depth of that report. And what's interesting to me too is the objectivity. It's a unique process when you're dealing with someone like you you're vested in the outcome, right? You really, like at your core, I think every one of the ones that's in that flow, you want them to succeed.
100%.
But you're able to separate that need for shiny toys.
Yeah.
And the reality of business and maturity of software. So talk a little bit about that report.
Yeah. So going back to maybe even the evaluation phase, and I say that to every startup that I talk to, is like, if I believe in your product and I see the value and I can match it with a problem statement that I see internally, I'll become your marketing person, your sales guy, your BDR team within Haskell, right? I will promote it as much as I possibly can and try to make it succeed. That said, some of them don't, right? Because when it all comes down to success criteria. So that's when we go to the report and we say, what did we say we're measuring success against? So there has to be some objective metrics, right? It's like, how much time did this save us? How much money did this save us? And it doesn't even have to be something that has a positive ROI at this point, because again, we're just testing it on a small scale. But you can interpolate and see how that is going to affect if you apply it on 20 projects instead of one, right? And we document a lot. So a lot of the objective things are easy to find, right? So from the beginning, you set them up, you do the pilot, you just come back and measure. It's the subjective part that's always the hard one to catch. And that's when we constantly need to be on top of the end users and talking to them and understanding, did this look easy to you, or did it feel better for you? It's those, intangible things that you really can't put a number on it. They're like, yeah, this actually is intuitive, or this alleviates that specific pain point that I had with the other solution or Excel.
Yeah.
If I get a dime for every time I try to displace Excel, I'll be a millionaire by now. But
yeah, good luck.
You and I both, man. You and I both. We wouldn't have to do podcasts, and we wouldn't have to have day jobs if we could just cash in on that one. You hit a key component: quantitative and qualitative.
Yes.
I think I see people too far on either side and not blending. That's a powerful piece. And you had a few more things that go into that report.
Yeah, so the quantitative, qualitative, we have to collect them, and just again for the reporting piece of it, is we're just laying it out as it is. We're not trying to sugarcoat it. We're not trying to justify why this is like that, right? For the analysis part of it. But then the cool part is that we share this report back with, of course, the technology provider, right? That's something that's going to help them improve their product, improve their process. A lot of times, so that's something that also I've seen in the ConTech crew a couple of times, which is like, a lot of times it's not really about the tech, it's about the people. So it's like the implementation person just rubbed me off the wrong way. It's like, it's things like that you have to capture from the end users and understand how do you make it better, right? And how do you improve that process? But we end up the report always with the recommendation piece. And that's not necessarily the technology provider. That's for our operations team that says, here's what I think we should do. And here's why I think this has synergy with what we're doing internally or not. Sometimes like 50% of the reports that we put out says, actually, do not use this. But it's part of the process, right?
We talk about failure over and over. You're the living, breathing. Look, 50% fail. That's a hell of a rate, though. Honestly, I mean, if you were playing baseball, you're beyond the Hall of Fame. Like you're the best hitter ever. So let's look at it that way.
50% of reports. So some of them actually fail before we even get to reports. So I'm not even counting the full number.
Yeah. Wow.
So it is probably more of that baseball 300. You're batting pretty well, and that's a real hard pill to swallow for leadership. It's a hard pill to swallow for your people as well, because we put a lot of investment in each thing personally through our interaction. So that's had to be sort of a process for you to learn and grow through. Like, it's not easy to say no. And I'm fairly sure most of those founders and most of those technology companies, you actually enjoyed your time with them, enjoyed the solutions, enjoyed the even the product statement or the problem statement. But you got to separate from that. That's a hard one. How do you manage that process? Because you are like the world's best hype machine when you're hot on something, and when I see you out there in the world.
That is true.
So it's very hard for me to see you being like, yeah, no.
It's never a no, so to say. So if I'm not going to put something through the rigor and through a structured pilot program and spend all the time and effort if I really don't see a value in the solution. But sometimes, again, it doesn't meet the success criteria that we set it for. So I have to tell them, I have to share with that technology provider saying, this is why we're not moving forward. Let me know if you improve. Let me know if you change any of that. Come back to us. We'll pilot it again. I'm never going to say like, go away, this doesn't work, in a sense.
Yeah, and I love that, because that is a critical component, because it's the continuous feedback loop. And you're creating it at a point where you're preventing waste on Haskell's side, meaning taking something too far and using up your political capital or innovation capital, we could call it, but giving them an opportunity. So it's not a one and done. You're a back and forth and very collaborative with those groups, right?
100%.
But I think it's interesting if we go to the next stage of, okay, they are successful, you see value, it's let's roll it out. But you mentioned people. It's like, just because you roll it out doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like what's are you measuring like adoption percentage, or like how adoption rollout goes when you get to that phase?
I would love to say yes, but again, that's when I hand it off, and I'm so glad that I hand it off at that point, because that's actually the hardest part. And we've been involved. So we don't just, give them the report and go away. We try to help the operations team stand it up. So we get them with training and branding internally, messaging, change management, right? Like ADCAR acronym. We help them, but we're not doing it day in and day out. But as soon as we hit that button and we say this is enterprise, our hands are off. So we're not measuring that adoption and continuing to kind of evaluate it, because that's on them now. They can loop us back in if they see any issues, or if they saw, sometimes they see another shiny object. They're like, wait a minute, can you guys evaluate that? I'm like, no, we just scaled this. We don't.
But I love that you said training, branding, and messaging, right? That it's not just training people up of hey, you're going to do this, and because I said so. It's we have to have some branding and some messaging as to why, as a company, we're making this decision to change, how it impacts them, and what value they should expect, or what they should expect.
And most of those are really kind of ad hoc use cases. So in a sense that it becomes available to all project managers, right? But it's not it's never you have to use this, unless if it's Procore. So we're a Procore shop.
Unless it's Procore.
Right? Because that's the central piece. That's the project management.
It's your system of record. Right? It's your system of record. Right. Yes, exactly.
But if you're talking about a point solution, if I scale it, I'm going to say, you have access to it. This is how much it's going to cost your project.
Yeah.
Use it or not. That's going to affect your budget and might save you time or money. But it's all about those, to your point, is the messaging is how do you apply it? How is this going to save time and money for you, right? Because at the end of the day, the project manager cares about my own budget and my own time. And that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I love that, because you hit a Nathan there. You got a system of record. You've got to have a
centralized. Your system of record is Procore, and we default to say whatever our system of record is. I just I was trying to be slightly agnostic around here, so it's everyone's in Procore, duh.
So there's two more things in there that I really want to dig into. I've had this discussion quite a bit, and I'm very interested in your philosophy on try to find it first. I have recently been talking to a lot of folks and a few who are on the exact opposite. They firmly disagree with you that you build it yourself, because no one out there can build it for you. I'm interested in why you land on the side that you land on.
Yes, I was presenting as in the opening keynote of Advanced Construction Tech in, I think, 21 or 22. And there was that pushback from one of the audience members. They're like, wait a minute. No, actually, we'd rather build it ourselves because we have control and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I mean, if you have a dedicated dev team, it's great. We don't. We have a small dev team, right? We're 3-4 developers that are keeping all the other systems working and talking to each other. But they're not set to just come and develop a whole platform that everybody's going to use. And to me, I can hire a third-party developer to help me build it. But as soon as we have ownership of it, now it's maintenance. Now it's making sure that it's updated, and things change all the time. Microsoft updates their system freaking weekly. One thing might break something in this platform that we just built. So I just don't have the capacity to keep maintaining it. That's why I don't like to build it. What we see is when we find a solution that's viable, we actually make a capital investment and become, part of the board and directors and help guide that in a sense that this is where we want the product to go. And not, yes, selfishly for our use cases, but also for the whole industry, because we're not, that's something that I also bring up a lot is every GC, I don't know why they think they're unique. We're all doing the same thing. There's different solutions, different tools, and different means and methods, but generally we're all doing the same thing.
It's interesting because they will argue that that investment of capital, that investment of time that you have could be shifted to this type of environment. So it's a very loaded, very fun conversation. I like having it, because I'm actually against it in most cases. And a lot of it is driven by poor relationships with technology vendors. And I just wonder if maybe that's part of the reason you've got an ability, or, and also I'll be honest, as you say this with GCs, they do things differently. Trade contractors, with fabrication, some of the other things they need to do, there's probably less out there for them. And maybe it's that causes some of the differences.
I mean, if I have a development team, we can be like spitting out a new product every 6 months. There's tons of ideas internally, and we keep getting more and more. And we have a structured kind of innovation program where we host like a Shark Tank style event every year called Big Pitch, where we get everybody to submit ideas and select the top 5, polish them up, do a business plan for them, and have them go and present it in front of executives. And they usually fund the winner and the runner-up. I usually say, just give me one, but they always give me 2.
They always give you 2.
But then there's the other 3 ideas that didn't win, but they're still very valuable and viable opportunities. But it's a completely different role, so to say. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying like it's not in my purview to do that, right? If there was a bigger team, a dev shop, and all that stuff, yes, that would be amazing. But I'm not in that boat.
You're not in that boat. And so that brings me to the other one, because I'm sure I'm going to get some flack over that one. But you have a team of 4. And that is a very, again, most of my innovators are an office of 1. Maybe sometimes they feel like an office of a half because they're still really busy in BIM and VDC, even though they were told they're not. So what is, how did you build that team, and what do those skills consist of? And, where is that team right now as far as, Dysruptek and Haskell with your team?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the mantra when the executives created Dysruptek, which is like invest, invent, innovate, right? So we had 3 people. One is, Cutler and up, responsible about looking at all investment opportunities and what's coming down the horizon. And I was like the innovation, just look at ideas, look at technologies out there. And then we had a third person that does R&D, invent, right? And that's kind of what we've been running. We go up, like maybe sometimes we become 4 and sometimes we become 2, but now we're at 4. It's the same thing, right? So invest, invent, innovate, but we have added George Tabella, who's like robotics lead, right? So he does also a lot of the R&D efforts, but very specifically kind of brought in to focus on robotics and how that can help us.
So you've really laid out, just by adding 4 people, you've really kind of covered the ecosystem, so to speak. You have you that took the position in the beginning and built the department, or built, the framework of what Dysruptek is, but now someone involved in investment, someone involved in emerging tech and watching the new market, and then someone watching robotics and R&D, which in my opinion is a killer kind of grouping and exposure to everything that's going on. How do you 4 work together in that process to sort of stay locked at the hip? Because you guys have got to be pulling that whip you've got over there, that stuff you've got over there, in one direction.
Yeah, we're constantly, so we're in the same location too. We're all in Jacksonville, Florida, and we all, we report through Cutler and up as the investment managing director to our CFO, which is, you don't see that in a lot of companies. The innovation team is reporting to the CFO, but it works really well. We're fortunate to have that and the good leadership, and it's great, like to have an awesome CFO as Brad Slappy here in Haskell, because every time we go back to him and we say, hey, this is this cool opportunity, that means like more faster. He's like, don't even give me the pitch, more faster, go. But great.
That's a unique CFO, man. That's going to be one. I'm going to put him on my list. We do not hear that from CFOs.
No, we are fortunate enough to have a strategically, minded CFO, not just looking at numbers, but he's always looking at strategy, and he does a lot of our M&As as well. So it's interesting dynamics that we have there. But we're constantly in each other's cubicles or offices and just talking about what's happening. And it's never like a silo, so to say. So when I say like Leah does emerging tech, that's not all she does, right? So there's a lot of bleeding and overlap here and there. But what I'm looking at, like from my perspective, is more of like the innovation culture, right? And the competitions internally and collecting the ideas and talking to the people and trying to match them with these projects.
Well, and part of those ideas starts with the problem itself, right? And I think
Absolutely.
whether it's a quality group or your group, or like, how are you guys managing or trying to close that knowledge gap of lessons learned? And because that's always been kind of a taboo thing, right? Of like, how much do we share of our F ups, right? But yeah, like how are you guys handling that side of it?
That's actually a winning idea of Big Pitch 2021.
Ah, there you go. Okay. Tell us more.
like somebody submitted is like, hey, we're doing like as a construction, a design build company. We're doing architecture, designing and engineering and then construction. We do a lot of mistakes. Like nobody wants to call them mistakes. You want to call them learnings. That's fine. Yeah. You can call them whatever you want.
Whatever.
You need to learn from them, right? And his idea is like, we need to have a platform that helps us collect that. And again, that goes back to, all right, we looked at the market. There was no platform that helps you collect all the lessons learned from the different projects, even like from us as an innovation group that we've learned things. Where do I put it, right? Usually Excel. That's where you see them all the time. But then so that's when I put on my developer hat on, and I didn't want to, but I had to. But when we talked to Via Technic, and they actually had a very kind of like bare bone version of that. And they were like, they're using it internally called Precogs. We're like, all right, come partnership. Like we partnered with Via Technic and we helped them build Precogs. And now it's available. It's in the market. Everybody can check it out. It's a really good tool that helps you collect all those lessons learned. You can call them whatever you want, and getting them in front of the next project so they're not repeating some of the mistakes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, I'm familiar with Precogs, and it's codifying the knowledge of the past and really democratizing it to the teams of the future. And it's really positioning people to stop making the same mistake over and over again and make new ones, because that's what we're going to do. But that's the beauty is we shouldn't. Construction is a little bit of the definition of insanity, right? We do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Because we're not learning from it. We're not knowledge managing the experiences that we have. I mean, it's so crazy to me that so much of the innovation from a means and methods and a delivery perspective is locked in the minds of a select group of people.
Absolutely.
And they're retiring and leaving.
Very soon.
Very, very soon.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that plays a role too in sort of one of the pillars, or how you get to some of your goals in 2025, which by the way, that's coming up, man.
Next year. Yeah.
I'm hoping you got some sort of metric somewhere. You guys are starting to check things off. Make sure you made it to where you're supposed to make it.
A big countdown clock.
Yeah. No, we're keeping track. We're having our OKRs. We're keeping track. So we're actually ahead of where we want it to be, which is great. But yeah, keep going.
That's awesome. I mean, we could dive into a lot of that. Nathan, do you have any more?
No, I was going to say we could talk all day about codifying the lessons learned, but that's actually Josh Bode and others will be down in Austin for the summit. We'll be talking about that. So just one more reason, Hamzah, for you to come down. So no, awesome. I got nothing more.
Okay.
We're just going to pitch him on coming down to the AEC Integration Summit, because that's where a lot of this stuff is going from inside places like Haskell and Dysruptek and starting to bring larger problem sets and really truly defining them. One of the interesting parts about what we're trying to do there and what you're doing versus what you're doing is you're trying to solve very specific problems from a very specific perspective. And you are trying to help your competitors, partners, whatever it is in the GC world. But it's kind of cool to see, and for you to get involved in getting outside of that and looking at what we all know makes up the built environment, right? On every one of those jobs you talk about, we have architects, owners, engineers, trade contractors, building product manufacturers, and everybody has a whole new ball of wax they want to bring. So, I mean, do you guys look at that as part of your process as well? Like, how does that play into the role of what you're thinking?
100%. We're constantly in all these innovation circles, roundtables, councils, what you have them, talking to our peers, talking to our competitors, just again comparing notes, trying to understand where do we stand, how does it compare to what they have, so that we can all be better together. That's kind of the mission here. Is like, I need to make this plaque. I have an imaginary plaque on my wall that says "for the betterment of the industry." But it's not real yet, but I need to make it.
Man, I can see it now.
There's probably, hey, listen, there's a few of you listening that I know have CNC machines that I know do this kind of thing. So if in your spare time you're looking for it, there's a good quote for you to build for Hamzah, and just reach out to him, hit him on LinkedIn. He's always active on LinkedIn, and you can always find him at some of the best shows in the industry. Any other shows you're going to in next couple months?
Other than the summit?
Got him.
Nothing on the. I think Advanced Construction Tech is one that I attend every year, but it's in August. It's far from now, but hoping to get on ENR Future Tech. I've been trying to get on that, so we'll see what happens there. But RCN is also another good one that's coming in October. So.
Well, those are good ones, and I know we'll see you out there on the road. And I know I'm excited that you finally got on the show, and I think the timing was exactly right, buddy. Thanks for sitting down with us today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and now it's time for the construction technology news of the week.
So my first story, I knew we were not going to have enough time, so I had to put in a selfless plug. Anytime I was just talking to Sal D'Ambrosia this week, and I just saw here put a post out. I'll just read it real quick here. Why do we persist in building with paper when the wealth of invaluable data lies within digital models already created? It appears to be a matter of education, or rather the lack thereof. One might argue that there's resistance systems from a deep-rooted familiarity with paper-based processes and a reluctance to embrace newer methodologies rooted in digital modeling. You can just see the passion in his voice. But again, promoting Hamzah's book, The Paperless Builder, which I just, again, prior to this recording, hit my just-in-time delivery, hit my pre-order too. So I think there's 121 at least, but let's take some time. Tell us about the book. I'm so jealous as someone who always wanted to write a book, knew how important that was, but just don't have the follow through and the tenacity that you do. So congratulations, and tell us more about it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Sal. These are awesome words to hear, and it's really, that's what I keep trying to say, is like, this is a community effort, right? So I'm really just compiling a lot of the stuff that I've heard over and over again. And what the book is about is really just three parts: the why, what, and how of construction tech. And I get a lot of beef when I say construction, not AECO. And I'm like, there is no construction project without architecture and engineering. There is no construction project that's not going to go to operations. So to me, that's kind of like a central piece that might encompass all of that. But yeah, it's really just understanding the problem statements and seeing what can be improved. And then the what is what types of technologies out there. I don't mention any technology by name in the book. It's just technology types and how they can solve for some of those problem statements. And then the last part is the how. And that's kind of what I've learned throughout my years here in Haskell and talking to others in the industry, is like just created a framework of how do you evaluate technologies out there? How do you implement them? How do you pilot? How do you scale? Very, very kind of, this is a very brief description on the book. But again, it's like, thank you to all the backers and the pre-orders and collecting the interviews. That's really what's setting the book up for success. Is it's not just from my perspective, is I'm talking to owners, I'm talking to engineers, I'm talking to architects, subcontractors, suppliers, inspection agencies, what have you, right? Anybody that's willing to share some of that knowledge that can elaborate on the content of the book, I'm more than happy to and listen to that. And of course, we'll give you a shout out at the book.
Well, it's awesome, man, because what Sal's asking for is what you're actually doing. And I think we just discussed this a minute ago about codifying the knowledge in the construction industry before it leaves. Yeah. Well, we are the first, maybe second-ish generation. I don't know where you put us in that arc of innovation in technology and construction, but you're codifying the lessons that you've learned and democratizing it, right? It's in a book format so people can understand it, but you've really created a playbook for others to come behind you, pick up where you were, and really run forward with it and not try to consistently reinvent the wheel. This will also help every size contractor can really dig into, anywhere in that why, what, and how,
Yeah.
and find a way to deliver, find a way to learn something, and find a way to continually move forward. One of the biggest problems in this industry and in any innovation, right? It's not about kicking construction. It's just about reality. Is we always try to eat the cake in one bite. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
It's not possible. You have to take small bites, chew till you're finished, and keep moving on and bite off what you can when you can, and understand your organization's need for that, all of those things that you need. So super cool to see you do it, man. And who better to do it than somebody who's been an OG in the business and really lived it.
And listening to ConTech Trio since the OG beginnings, right? Because it's building a common language, right? A podcast build a common language, books build, all these things build common language. And that's really what we need, right? Because we're just, everything's getting lost in translation as we try and figure this out in the digital world. So
100%.
Yeah. Kudos. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, since Nathan is the LinkedIn guy, what else you got for us there, Nathan?
Well, another one. So Brian Skrupek, thank you for sending this out. I'm going to call this interoperability porn because anytime you see numbers that are just validating to how much of an issue it is with the lack of sharing of information across the construction supply chain. So this article that he shared, thank you, between IFMA and Autodesk was IFMA is the International Facility Managers Association. So facility managers, folks that I generally think of as not being very involved. Again, a lot of these stats here, one of them around, 95% of data that is generated during construction does go unused in that operations and FM phase. And so they're now seeing the problem. They're seeing the statistics. They want to, have a voice to bring this up. So I think it's validating that more of those people across that AECO supply chain are talking about the challenges, not just the GCs and the trades and the designers. So it's again nothing probably surprising to any of us that are in our listeners here, but definitely validating and a good report to share with those that are in the facility management world to help keep them educated.
Well, and I'll take this from here, and I think Hamzah, you'll have some feedback on this because it's some of the reasons that the new platforms, the new ways are being designed, because it says 70% of facilities managers predict more collaboration with designers. We are finally starting to realize that the end in mind is not certificate of occupancy. It's not handoff. Right. It's actually the building and it's living, breathing, operating world that is truly the finish line. And in fact, I think we're starting to realize there is no finish line. If we're designing and building correctly, maybe it's a pause for 20 years, but we're going to be reworking those facilities. We're going to be changing them. We're going to be enhancing them. So this is really interesting because people already struggle to get an owner, an architect, and a general contractor in the room. Now you want to say you want the engineer. Okay, great. Now you want the facilities manager. This is a crazy conundrum, but the statistics say they're expecting it to happen. So you're, Hamzah, gonna have to do it.
Yeah, we're already seeing that, man. We've been seeing it for a while because we work with a lot of like big name companies that have all these different kind of like distribution centers or manufacturing facilities across the states. And you're talking to corporate, and they have like, this is the design that we want, and that's great. That's fine. That's fantastic. We go to that specific job site. They're like, no. We don't do it like this here. So it's like you literally have to start including not only like the owner perspective, but the facility manager that's actually going to be running it way early on, because otherwise you're just going to get to construction and be like, no, this isn't, I don't want it like this. So we're going to have to change things. And not wrong, right? And it's part of the owner too, because, they're paying for it.
Yeah. Yeah, not to give another plug, but that's why, like, my other co-host, Jacob Dalbora, is over at Via Technic doing what he's doing because he comes from the digital owner side. And that's how, again, if you can expose the difference between corporate and local and integrate that in technologically, it can be built into the BIM and the planning and the O&M and how you do these things in the future, and not create just one more ton of waste.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunately what seems to be happening. Well, I'm going to pivot us because I want to talk about disruption. If I have a person from Dysruptek, I have to talk disruption.
It's fair.
And I think this is an interesting one because this one comes from Wired, and it's Sundar Pichai from Google prepares for a future where search isn't king. This is really interesting because Google was built and founded and created and became the giant it is based on search. And they're now looking at their future, and the future of search being something completely separate than what it is today, thanks to a lot of the AI and large language models and the change in our ability to consume the entire internet through AI and then work with it in a very, very different way. And I had this conversation with Jonathan Marsh recently about there's a lot of reality around what AI is going to do for us. But one of the most fundamental pieces is search is a thing of the past when it really hits, because it can now process what we're asking it in a way. I think it's kind of funny though, because like if you go all the way back, like when I first started this, Ask Jeeves was that.
Yeah.
You asked it a question and it was doing something very different. It was not using a large language model. It was parsing that little thing into, oh, here's how you turn that into a search. But now we're saying we can ask large language models for the things that we need. So if you think that your construction company or your company can't be disrupted, yet Google's saying it can, this is interesting. So I'm interested, Nate, in what you think about what's going on here.
I mean, well, one, Jonathan Marsh is always the first person that pops in my head anytime these topics come up, like ChatGPT, because I'm amazed at how many things he does using AI. And I'm like, man, I really need to figure out how to do this. So, because there are so many activities that I do in preparation for the summit, of whether it's, creating visuals or, just grammar, related things, and just helping write things, because I do not like to write, Hamzah, which is why I never finished the book. So I think there's so many ways that AI can eventually help someone like me that understands where I excel and where I come up short, and you kind of use AI to fill in the gaps, but it's never going to make you an expert at everything. It's just going to help, fill in those gaps, and knowing yourself and knowing like where your gaps are is how you use AI to probably, use it in the right way and not the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to like, how did Google become Google, right? It's like they were actually losing the race to win this whole search industry back in the day, until they figured out how to tweak their algorithm so that it can show relevant ads based on your search. That was what set them apart. So when Sundar Pichai talks about, the search is going to go away because people are not going to just Google something. They're going to ask Gemini or OpenAI or Copilot. And that's just going to provide the information to him and to Google. The disruption is, this is a completely different business model. I can't just show the ads now, right? It's like, so how do I play around that? So,
yeah. I mean, we didn't even talk about it, but how do you monetize what you're doing? I mean, you're starting to see it in Copilot and, in ChatGPT, you can now pay Microsoft to use their Copilot, which is very much driven off of OpenAI. They're very, they're different interfaces to doing different things, but you're using some of the same large language models, and they're vastly getting ahead of where Google is. So it'll be interesting to see how they create monetization, drive things that you want. I imagine a world in which, their engines actually use and service and offer you, do you want to see products that might help you? Do you want to find these kinds of things? I think they'll pivot and use what they know to drive us into a better world that way, to get things that we need and want, and maybe not as much as what we don't.
It always starts free until you get enough people adopting it, and then you figure out how to get it paid for, right? Like that is the startup model.
But they're also somebody's going to figure out the ads part of it too, because I was experimenting with one of them. I'm not going to mention a name, but I'm like, can you find me statistics on injuries in the construction industry between 2010 to 2025 based on this location? Like very specific statistics is what I'm asking for. And it came back to me with numbers and sources, and I'm like, whoa, this is great. So I clicked on the first source, and it's like, Morgan & Morgan, are you injured? I'm like, no, I'm not. I just want to see where the data came from.
You can still embed universal tag manager links inside of the responses. So yeah. My wife's industry isn't going away anytime soon.
No, but it's about to be disrupted and changed.
Oh, totally.
For sure.
Which is awesome because, hey, that's a brave new world, right? We'll move on from there. So we're going to move from disruption into some reality. And I'm really interested in your perspective on this, Hamzah, as we talk about it. But so this is from Construction Dive, Intel's $20 billion Ohio plant is delayed. The semiconductor giant has halted its Licking County project, citing business conditions and the demand environment, but said construction will continue soon. So this is some of the reality of what we're seeing at this point, is that we're seeing jobs go on hold due to some of the business conditions and the demand and high interest rates, labor shortages, regulatory delays, that are really hampering this, what is a record backlog in a lot of these areas, from getting started. And I think there's more at risk here than we really would like to talk about. Yeah. And I think we have to talk about it. I think there's certain things for me that are, I don't want to say controllable, but are manageable. I think this is a moment in time for really, truly innovative construction companies to keep work on track. So much of this new collaborative delivery model is done before we put a shovel in the ground. Well, let's be honest. We're apt to pull a project if we haven't started digging, if we haven't started building. So a lot of this process has to be about builders getting projects moving and not being caught in analysis paralysis and discussion mitigation, et cetera, things that we love to talk about in boardrooms, and really get people rolling. Because once you get shovels in the ground and get moving, there's a much lower propensity to stop the projects in general. Yeah. And we need these things. I mean, on the flip side, it's a semiconductor plant. These are critical components that we saw during COVID become a real problem for us in the supply chain. And this is our answer to supply chain mitigation. But if we've put it on hold, we're just kicking the can down the road. So I'm really interested, Hamzah, from your perspective as a builder and seeing some of this, what are the discussions going on? What are the thoughts in your head about how we mitigate that risk?
Yeah, I mean, it's really project by project basis, client by client basis, but we try, and that's something that go back to, like, my PhD advisor was like, what do you think GCs and what's their main business line? And I'm like, they're building things. He's like, no, their main business line is risk management. That's literally what they're doing. That's the entirety of your job. So that's where we kind of would try to focus on. We have a dedicated risk management team that works with a lot of our groups and the forefront of projects. When you're looking at it as an evaluation, is this something that we want to bid on or propose on, or is throughout the project management aspect of it until delivery? But one thing that stood out to me is, like, I haven't read the actual article and see why there was a delay or what was the hold on that. But one thing that I spoke with Jake Olson about in the book, and he was talking about, like, how, GCs also need to be flexible with clients in a sense that, their needs might change, right? They might find different technology to help deliver better products. So mid projects, right? Mid construction, you need to be able to to be agile enough so you can accommodate that and continue the project in a way that fits the client's needs. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. But again, I'm not privy on the details of this specific project.
Well, and actually, I'm going to jump in and be wrong about something, because actually, this one's interesting because they had, since September 2022, poured over 32,000 cubic yards of concrete, installed 15,000 linear feet of underground pipe, and laid more than 210,000 linear feet of underground conduit. So even me, my earlier statement about not slowing down, we're seeing a new propensity for slowing down, for pausing. So maybe even a more need, Hamzah, for what you're talking about. But I also believe a lot of that is keeping things on track ahead of interest rates, because a lot of the interest rate issues are causing the problems, right? Money is more expensive right now. So the cost of construction is up, versus, I can't imagine it goes down though. And so I'm interested in some of this as well. So I'll probably post this one soon just to get some reaction. Nathan, I'm interested in your reaction, and, even me being wrong in my own article.
Well, and this may be less related to the article and more just this growing supply demand disparity in the industry. And I mean, if you don't count COVID, our last big financial crisis was this all about collateralized debt obligations. And there's all this kind of, you can learn more about the root cause of what led to that. I really feel like the next big bubble that's going to burst is the fact that there are still a lot of people that make a lot of money in this industry off of the waste. And somebody has to pay at some point, and it's going to be the American people. And it will come back to haunt us. And if we don't get in front of it, it's just like global warming, right? Like, and all the sustainability stuff, like the more we put it off, the worse it's going to get. And all of this comes together of just waste, whether it's human capital waste or material waste or otherwise. And we're just so driven by bottom dollars and needing to get things running, but then municipalities get in the way, or it's always one of these variables. And yeah, coming up with a much more agile way to approach this industry and have contractual mechanisms to do so is hugely, way more important than any technology.
Well, that was well said, my friend. And that's why
Off the soapbox.
That's why we bring Nathan Wood and his soapbox to shows. Well, guys, this is awesome. It's been long needed. I'm glad it came together. I'm glad we were able to sit down and do this. Hamzah, again, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to catching you out on the road. And just do me a favor and keep doing what you're doing. You're one of the big positive influences in the industry, and you're always a pleasure to see running around at a trade show. So if you guys see Hamzah at a trade show, at least follow him through the exhibit hall and look for where he's looking.
If you do, you'll get to a really nice dinner too. he always seems to find himself at the executive, really nice invited dinners. So yeah, if you can hang out with him, you might get invited to those too.
Thank you guys. Thank you for hosting me. This was awesome and a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Nathan, thank you for sitting down from the newly finished office. Although it looks very much similar. Maybe someday we'll get you from another office there and we'll get a new view.
Oh yeah, one day.
One day we will get there. And thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Hamzah Shanbari. To read all our news stories, to learn more about our guests, and to listen to the show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.